I spent an entire month renovating my grandparents' house, replacing floors, fixing plumbing, repainting everything. At the family reunion, my uncle stood up and said, "Glad someone finally got off their lazy butt to help." Everyone laughed as if it was a joke. My hands trembled. 2 years later, that same uncle was the one begging for a loan to save his own house, and I never took his call. My name's Daniel. I'm 30 now, but this story started when I was 28. I'm from Charleston, West Virginia, but I've lived in Columbus, Ohio, most of my adult life. I don't go home much. When I do, it's usually because something serious happened. This time, it was my grandfather passing. My grandma had died 6 months before him. After she passed, he kind of gave up. Stopped taking care of the house. Stopped cooking. Stopped trying. I'd call him, and he'd say he was fine, but I knew he wasn't. By the time I got back for the funeral, the house smelled like mold and the floors in the kitchen were soft in the corners. The plumbing under the sink was leaking into a bowl that he just kept emptying out. The house wasn't fancy. It was built in the 1950s, single-story, faded yellow paint with white trim. But it was the only stable place I had as a kid. My mom and I lived all over apartments, one-bedroom rentals, even a motel once when things got bad. But Grandma and Grandpa's house was where I went for dinner every Sunday, where I opened presents every Christmas, where I felt safe. So when Grandpa died and the house passed to the family, I asked if I could fix it up. No one else stepped up. My Uncle Rick, my mom's older brother, was technically in charge of Grandpa's will. But he didn't want the house. He said, "Too much work, probably costs more than it's worth." I asked if I could work on it, and he shrugged and said, "Go ahead." Not like I care. I don't think he thought I'd actually do it. But I did. I took a month off work. Packed up my tools and drove to Charleston. I stayed in the house, even though the mattress was old and the heat didn't work right. I spent every day working, tearing up the ruined carpet in the living room, replacing old laminate in the kitchen with real wood floors, patching drywall in the hallway, repainting every room. I even fixed a busted pipe under the bathroom sink that had probably been dripping for years. I watched tutorials online late at night, wrote down supply lists, drove back and forth to Home Depot like it was my job. I didn't ask anyone for help. I didn't tell people what I was doing. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just felt like I owed it to them, to my grandparents, to bring that house back to life. It felt good to do something with my hands. Something real. The work took longer than I thought. I went back home for a few weeks, then came back again for another 2. By the end of it, the house looked completely different. Fresh paint. Clean, working kitchen. New floors. Even the old porch swing got fixed. I took pictures. Not for likes or comments, just to remember how far it had come. That summer, my cousin Ellie hosted the family reunion in her backyard over in Huntington. It was hot. Plastic tables with those red and white checkered covers, kids running around with juice boxes, older folks in lawn chairs with fans waving from their laps. I showed up a little late. I had the photos of the house on my phone. When people asked what I'd been up to, I told them about the renovation. Some smiled. My mom nodded, said something like, "He really worked hard on it." Then Rick, my Uncle Rick, stood up near the grill and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "Glad someone finally got off their lazy butt and helped out for once." He laughed hard, like he'd just made the best joke at a bar. And everyone laughed with him. I froze. It was like something inside me cracked. I looked around and saw faces smiling, heads shaking, people chuckling like it was all some cute family story. My mom didn't say anything. She just sipped her lemonade, eyes on her lap. Nobody said a word to stop it. Nobody said, "Hey, that was rude," or "Don't talk like that." Not even the ones who'd seen me sweating in that house day after day. They all just let it happen. I left early. Didn't finish my plate. Drove back to Columbus that night and didn't say a word to anyone for a long time. They mocked me for doing something real. For caring. So I stopped caring about them. 2 years passed. I focused on work. Saved up. Bought a small house in Columbus. Painted it myself. Started turning down family invites. Ignored group texts. Let the distance grow. Then, out of nowhere, I got a voicemail. It was Rick. "Hey Danny, listen, I know we haven't talked in a while. I'm in a bit of a bind. The house is in trouble. Bank's talking foreclosure. I need a loan, just for a bit. I'll pay it back. I promise. Your family. Call me back." I didn't. He called again. And again. Left voicemails. Sent texts. I never responded. That was the first time in my life I had something someone else needed. And I realized I didn't owe him a thing. He never lifted a finger for our grandparents. Never once helped me fix the house. And when I did it all myself, he made a joke out of it. Now he needed help. Now he was begging. And I was silent. A few months later, I heard from Ellie that he lost the house. The bank took it. He moved into a rundown apartment in Beckley. Started selling tools online to make ends meet. No credit. No savings. No safety net. He never mentioned me publicly, but I saw the passive-aggressive Facebook posts. Funny how people vanish when you need them. Blood don't mean much anymore. He knew I saw the messages. He just didn't know I was smiling when I read them. A few months after Rick lost his house, things got even more twisted. It started with my mom. She hadn't called me much since the reunion either. We had an okay relationship, but she always let Rick walk all over her. She'd make excuses for him, he's just joking, or he's had a hard life. But one night, out of the blue, she called crying. "Danny," she said, voice shaking. "Rick's in bad shape. He's talking about doing something stupid. He drinks all day. He's sick all the time. He's lost weight. He asked me to call you." I stayed quiet. "He says he's sorry," she went on. "Says he knows he messed up. He needs help." I could hear her waiting on the other end. Waiting for me to be the bigger person. I didn't say much. Just told her I had a lot going on. That I'd think about it. But I didn't. Instead, I drove past Rick's old house a week later when I visited Charleston. The grass was overgrown. Windows boarded up. A foreclosure notice still stapled to the front door. That place used to be loud with people, barbecue smoke in the yard, kids riding bikes. Now it was dead. I parked down the street and watched it for a few minutes. Thought about how I had asked him to help once, not even with money, just with time, and he made a joke out of it. I thought that was the end of it. Let him fall. Let him figure it out. I was done. But then Rick showed up in Columbus. I was coming home from the grocery store when I saw him sitting on my front porch like it was normal. Like we were just gonna catch up after all this time. He looked bad. Hair thinner, face pale, dark circles under his eyes. "Danny," he said, standing up. I had to come. I didn't know what else to do. I dropped my bags and stared at him. "You drove here?" He nodded. "Borrowed a friend's truck. Slept in it last night." I didn't say anything. Just unlocked the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me without inviting him in. He stood on the other side of the door, knocking once, then again. "I was wrong," he said through the wood. I was stupid. You worked hard and I treated it like a joke. I know that. I lost everything. I got no one left but you. I said nothing. After a minute, I heard him walk away. But that wasn't the last of it. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Rick. A full-page, handwritten apology. He talked about the reunion, about Grandpa's house, about how he realized too late that I was the only one who gave a damn. He wrote about being broke, sick, and scared. About sleeping in his truck some nights. About not being able to afford food. And at the very end, he wrote, "If you want me to disappear, I will. But I needed to say sorry. Even if it's too late." I left the letter on the table for 2 days. Just stared at it every time I walked by. Then one night, I grabbed a lighter and burned it in the sink. Some scars don't fade. Some lessons cost more than others. I didn't want to be the person who forgives just because someone finally says sorry when they're down. He kicked me when I was trying to stand. Now he was the one crawling. And I wasn't reaching down. 3 weeks later, the twist I didn't expect showed up. I got a certified letter in the mail. Not from Rick this time. From a law office in Charleston. I opened it at the kitchen table while eating dinner, not thinking much of it. Inside was a copy of Grandpa's old will. And a formal notice. Rick was contesting it. Apparently, back when Grandpa was alive, he'd told Rick something offhand that the house would go to the family, and everyone would share it. Nothing in writing. No formal clause. Just Rick trying to scrape something together from a man no longer here. But Rick was claiming that my renovations meant I had taken over family property without consent. That I changed the value of the estate and owed him compensation for what the house was worth now. I dropped the fork. My hands were shaking again, not from fear this time, but pure rage. He was broke, desperate, and clawing at whatever he could find. Even if it meant dragging me through court. I called the lawyer listed on the notice. He sounded embarrassed even talking about it. Said Rick had no real case. But legally, they had to notify me. There might be a hearing. There might be questions. Suddenly, my quiet revenge wasn't so quiet anymore. I called my mom. "You knew he was going to do this?" I asked. She was quiet for a few seconds. "He mentioned it, but I didn't think he'd actually go through with it. He's trying to sue me for fixing up our grandparents' house." "I know." "I'm sorry. You're still talking to him?" "He's my brother." That was it for me. I hung up. The next day, I drove back to Charleston. I went straight to the house, the one I had poured a month of sweat into, the one Rick never lifted a finger for and stood out front for a long time. Then I went inside. Everything still looked good. The paint was solid. The pipes were fine. But something in the air had changed. I wasn't proud anymore. I was angry. I didn't just want Rick to fail. I wanted him to understand what he'd thrown away. So I started gathering every receipt I had from the renovation. Flooring, paint, tools, plumbing parts, every single thing I bought. I made a spreadsheet and totaled it all. Then I added the hours I worked. I listed them like labor. I assigned myself a wage. I added that to the total. When the court date finally came, Rick showed up looking like a man out of time, old flannel, hollow eyes, trembling hands. He didn't even have a real lawyer. Just a public defender helping him with paperwork. I handed the judge a binder. Inside, photos of the house before and after, every receipt, a labor log, and a statement. I told the court exactly what I'd done, why I did it, and who benefited. Rick didn't say a word. He couldn't argue. He knew. The case was dismissed in 15 minutes. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was what happened after. When court ended, and people were leaving, Rick came up to me in the hallway. "I had to try," he said. "I'm drowning, Danny. You don't know what it's like." I looked him in the eye and said, "Yes I do. You were standing above me when I was drowning. And you laughed." He opened his mouth, but I walked past him. Outside, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. But it wouldn't last. Because 2 weeks later, someone broke into my house in Columbus. It was a Saturday. I had gone out for groceries, and when I came back, the back door was wide open. At first, I thought I had left it unlocked. Then I saw the frame splintered wood around the lock, the latch bent like someone had forced it with a crowbar. Inside, the place was a mess. Drawers pulled out. Couch cushions flipped. My bedroom torn apart. My laptop was gone. So was a small lockbox where I kept a few old photos and about $600 in emergency cash. Nothing else seemed to be taken, not the TV, not my tools, not even the gaming console in the living room. It felt personal. The cops came. Took a report. Said it was probably just someone looking for quick cash. Maybe drug-related. Told me to keep an eye on my credit cards and change my locks. I did both. But something didn't sit right. Why only take the laptop and the lockbox? Why not the stuff that was easier to grab? I checked the security camera I had installed over the garage. It didn't catch the face, just a blurry figure in a hoodie, hurrying toward the back fence at around 2 a.m. But then something hit me. The laptop had documents. All my receipts. The renovation logs. The court statements. Every bit of proof I had used against Rick. I still had copies on a cloud backup, but it made me think. Someone wanted them gone. Not pawned, gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out the letter Rick had sent before the lawsuit, the one I thought I had burned. Turns out, I never lit it. I had crumpled it and tossed it in a drawer. I flattened it out and read it again. The last line stood out now more than ever: "If you want me to disappear, I will." It wasn't a threat the first time I read it. Now it felt like a challenge. I started digging. I called Ellie, my cousin, the only one in the family I still halfway trusted. I asked if she had heard from Rick lately. She sighed. "I don't know what's going on with him, Dan. He's staying with this guy named Marty. Old friend from high school. They've been doing scrap work, cleaning out foreclosed homes, odd jobs. I think Rick's desperate." "Where's he staying?" She hesitated. "You're not gonna do anything stupid, right?" "I just want to talk." She gave me the address. It was an old duplex near Oak Hill. I drove there the next day. I didn't knock. I parked a block away and waited in my car. And sure enough, around 6 p.m., Rick came out. Alone. He looked rougher than before, like every day had worn him down further. I followed him. Just a few blocks. To a gas station. I stayed outside and waited again. When he came back out, he had a pack of smokes and a sandwich. He sat down on the curb next to the building to eat. That's when I walked up. He looked up, startled. Then looked around, like he was expecting a punch. But I didn't raise my voice. Didn't yell. "You break into my house?" He shook his head fast. "No. Jesus, Danny, no." Someone knew exactly what to take. He swallowed. I didn't. I didn't break in. But I might have told someone what was there. I stared. "I was drunk," he said. "I was talking to Marty. I said you had a lockbox. Said you were doing better than you let on. I didn't tell him to go there. I said too much. I felt my jaw clench. My fists curled without thinking. You told someone how to rob me. I didn't think he'd actually do it. You didn't think. Just like always. He stood up. You think I wanted this? You think I'm enjoying any of this? I think you made your bed. He looked at me, eyes red. You've already punished me. What more do you want? I stared at him for a long time. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't want to hit him. I wanted him to keep waking up like this every day. That was worse. I didn't talk to Rick again after that night. I changed my locks, added more cameras, and locked everything down tight. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. That maybe I had let it all go too far. Then winter came. I got a call from my mom in late December. Rick was in the hospital. He'd collapsed outside a gas station. Cold, dehydrated, weak. He'd been living in his truck again. No money for food. No heat. She said he might lose some toes to frostbite. I said nothing. Danny, she said, her voice breaking. He's still your family. Was, I said. He was family. Until he turned on me. Until he dragged me to court. Until he got my house broken into. She didn't argue. Just said, I don't know what else to do. That night, I sat in my room and stared at my ceiling. For the first time, I thought about everything. All of it. I wasn't innocent either. I could have let it go after the reunion. Could have ignored the joke. Could have laughed it off. But I didn't. I buried it deep, let it harden, and waited for my moment. When Rick needed a hand, I gave him silence. When he fell apart, I stood by and watched. When he begged, I shut the door. I could have ended this 100 different ways. But I wanted him to suffer. And now he had. I drove to the hospital the next morning. He was in a shared room. Looked like hell. Pale, thin, tubes in his arm. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Danny, I sat down in the plastic chair. Said nothing. He started to cry. I messed up. I know. I ruined everything. I said dumb stuff. I did worse. I know you hate me. I didn't interrupt. But if I don't make it through this, I just wanted to say I was proud of you. You did what none of us ever could. You took care of that house. You honored them. I stared at him. I got jealous. I was angry at myself. You reminded me what I should have done. I nodded. Not to forgive. Just to hear it. Then I stood up and walked out. That was the last time I saw him alive. Rick died 4 days later. Infection. Heart gave out. No health insurance. No funeral plan. Mom asked if I wanted to say something at the small service she put together. I said no. But I paid for it. Not for Rick, for her. Because no matter what happened, she was still my mom. After the service, I went back to the house. Grandpa's house. The one I had fixed, the one Rick once mocked me for working on. I stood on the porch. The wind was cold, but the house stood solid. Clean. Quiet. I thought about burning it down once. Now I was glad I didn't. Sometimes revenge doesn't fix anything. Sometimes it just leaves both sides worse off. But in my case, it left one man dead and another forever changed. I didn't regret what I did. But I don't smile about it anymore. Because in the end, revenge didn't heal the wound. It just carved the scar deeper. And now I have to live with it.